Good evening. How are you? It's in the 70s, and this evening it's going to be something like 55 degrees. It's very comfortable now, and there's almost no wind at all. But it's that pretty golden hour in the evening when the yellowish lights come through. And I always connect that with Italy. It just seems like that. Not that I remember a particular evening of the times I've been to Italy when the sunlight was like that, but it feels that way here. And we celebrate as long as we can have these dirt roads with trees surrounding them and animals crossing your path. We enjoy it as long as we can, because there are forces of evil out there that just don't appreciate it at all and just wander over it and destroy it. So where are we politically? Well, it's pretty obvious in a way. We are faced with Trump, who got fast bicyclists coming down the road. Now, this is a road that goes up and down, so that was the good part for him. The bad part is on the other side where it climbs up. Not so bad to walk, but pumping a bike up it is not quite that much fun. So, what do we have? We have a political black hole that sucks into it the misplaced ambition of men and women, a lot of lawyers, government types, political types, and they think that they're going in a wormhole that's going to shoot them to a new dimension. But instead they're in a black hole which when you enter it crushes you. And it takes whatever soul or high-minded thinking these people have and it crushes it. It just takes it away. And they're forever trapped. And once they're in it, there's no getting out of it. And so that's what our legal scene has become. And as I'm talking to you now, you start seeing the shattering of the lawyers. Different concessions they're having to make about lying or destroying documents or misrepresenting the courts, fighting for their licenses and being named in indictments. But we have a recent story today that advances the case, in my opinion, of good government and good prosecutions. And it goes a little bit like this. There's a man named Tavares, T-A-V-E-R-A-S. And Mr. Tavares worked at Mar-a-Lago, and he was their IT guy. He went before the grand jury, federal grand jury in D.C., talking about what was going on down at Mar-a-Lago. The focus of the question was, do you know of any effort to delete surveillance at Mar-a-Lago? And in summation, he said that no, he didn't know anything about it. Now, what's the truth? Now, you know about Nauta, who is the fellow at Mar-a-Lago who was with Trump in the White House and continued working for him when Trump was sent out of office down to Florida, to Mar-a-Lago. And he was involved, and we see him on videos, moving documents, boxes back and forth, okay? Now, there's another fella, Carlos de Oliveira, forgive my effort at a Spanish accent, but it's a beautiful name, and he was involved as well. And both of these men, Nauta and Oliveira, supposedly were directed by Trump to destroy the videos, and this information was passed on and through Tavares, because he was the IT expert. Now, I don't know if the sources are correct or not, but Tavares in part says he did this because he didn't want to lose his job. Now, the additional thing we have here is that Tavares, who had gone before the grand jury, was represented by counsel I don't know if you remember Stanley Woodward. And Stanley Woodward also represented Nauta. See him pushing the boxes in the videos. So, it's kind of incestuous. Now, let's have a legal memo break here. As a lawyer, you can represent more than one client. But often, the safest bet is whomever comes through your door first in a multi-defendant or multi-plaintiff case, civil or criminal, precludes you from representing someone who may have a conflict. Now, it's not ironclad, because particularly in criminal cases, you can have what's called a joint defense agreement, in which you've decided it's best to all work together than to splinter the defense and be at cross purposes with each other at a trial, thereby aiding and abetting the prosecution against yourself. Now, it was Benjamin Franklin who said that we all hang together or we'll all hang separately. Word to the wise. So it is legitimate. It has to be done very carefully, as you might imagine. Now, since Woodward was representing both Nauta and Taveras, he was in a difficult position. And Stanley Woodward, who by all accounts is quite a fine lawyer, has represented a whole bunch of people in the Trump domain. Now, is this the black hole I was talking about? Well, we joined the movie in progress. We don't know yet. But here's the problem. When Taveras got a target letter from Smith's team, the target letter says, we have sufficient evidence to indict you for perjury. And so that set him off to reconsider the counsel he had, Stanley Woodward, who was paid for by the Trump team. Now, this creates a real problem. And Woodward said things when asked, doesn't he have a conflict? How could he appear at the trial? And he said, well, you could keep Taveras off the stand. In other words, he'd like to pick which client he represented at the ongoing trial, or at least that's how it's been represented in the press. So, who's in the jackpot seat? Well, counsel Stanley Woodward may or may not, depending upon what advice he gave his client before he went in the grand jury and denied knowing anything about deleting surveillance records. So that could be a problem for him. But the deal that Taveras has now is that he fired Stanley Woodward. It sounds like a complicated crime procedural, doesn't it? So he fired his counsel, Stanley Woodward, and I believe he's now represented by the public defender, and his deal was he would not be prosecuted for perjury if he gave full, complete, and honest testimony about the goings-on of Nauta, Oliveira, and of course, Trump himself. Now, like I said, there are ways for counsel legitimately to represent more than one person. But when you start getting several and they're believed to be connected at the beginning, you get into trouble. So maybe the rule is, well, one or two. There was a fellow in New York, Murray Richmond. He represented a lot of people who were identified as organized crime. He was a former, if I remember correctly, DA. And when a number of these people recognized with organized crime were indicted, he would show up with counsel for each of them. And I don't, it's been a long time, but I think he only represented them in that case. That is to say, you didn't have this roving investigation going on. Well, one of the ironies is that he's been quoted as saying, Murray Richmond from the Bronx, had a lawyer, I want to say on the Grand Concourse, and he was very excited that Rudy Giuliani was prosecuted under RICO after Murray had handled his fair share of cases involving RICO. Interesting plot twist. Murray Richmond once was in my office when I was in the junk unit, which is prosecuting drug cases. And we were talking about the case, and Murray crossed his legs, and I saw on his ankle he had an ankle holster on. I said, how'd you get through security? He says, well, I wear it all the time. I didn't even think about it. I said, we have guys on this floor that we would not want, either one of us would not want them to get their hands on your handgun. So, Murray, I'll tell you, if there's a guy that could write a book that you'd want to read, it'd be Murray Richmond. So, where do we stand? Well, today is Tuesday, so tomorrow we have the fan dance of the Republican presidential contenders seeking to get the nomination from the Republican Party to take on Biden. But the real question is, what are these guys going to say? And Trump apparently may or may not have a tape on with the former Fox personality that was already taped. So that's a little strange. The interesting thing is, I don't know if you remember what they do after the debates, but they call it the spin room. And so people who represent the candidates who are on the stage come into the spin room, and they attract journalists depending upon who they're spinning for, and they put the best light on it. Now, Trump's son is going to be there, and Representative Green is going to be there, and maybe some other people. And in the absence of Trump, I'm sure they'll go into the spin room, which is usually whatever, the hotel or the building or whatever, and spin why Trump needn't be there, because he's already won it. Some think this is a strategy that has problems. We'll find out in the next series of polls and events. Now, as of this walking, as I understand it, Trump is appearing in Georgia on Thursday. The deadline's on Friday at noon, but he's going to appear on Thursday in court in Georgia. His bond is already set and the conditions are set, and he's going to agree to those, and we'll look and see if Georgia remains faithful to its promise to take a mug shot. Maybe there'll be a perp walk, maybe he'll give fingerprints. And it really shouldn't be a big deal since it happens for everyone, but Trump is special. He wants any aspect of the reality to be denied. I was in court earlier today with local counsel, and we're both admitted to the bar, but he was on the case before I came into it. And the former counsel handled it, has moved on, and so I've taken on the case after the conviction in the case. And we were walking out today, and we have a solution for Trump. At Andrews Air Force Base, build him a cell and give a special other building to the Secret Service, and we're done. We're ready. In fact, build it now. And so if he starts violating the various provisions about threatening and posting the wrong thing, you send him there for a couple of days at a time, no matter whether it's a state or a federal case. Make that the agreement for how to deal with this obnoxious, unethical, illegal, unlawful Trader, the trash talker from Flushing, Queens, finally has his day of accounting. He's coming closer. The doorsteps are pounding. The steps are pounding toward him. The walls are coming in. The ceiling and the floor are merging, and he's in there. And that's just fine. And I wish it could be done quickly, but maybe the nation needs to see it done slowly, because that's been the hallmark of this investigation. So I say good evening to you in the Cathedral of Trees. Until tomorrow, bye-bye.